Welcome back to our extended coverage of COVID-19 on BNC Prime News. Thanks to COVID-19, the unemployment rate is approaching a number the country hasn't really seen since the Great Depression, when more than 1/4 of the Americans were out of work. The rate this past April, 14.7%, almost 17% among Black Americans. So two questions. Where do we stand and what can we do about it? And joining me now to discuss the issues and hopefully some answers is Dr. William Spriggs, economist and professor at Howard University in Washington, D.C., joining us now from Northern Virginia. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. That stimulus check is in the mail, right? And yet folks are still trying to wait it out and weather the storm. So where is the help from the federal government?
Well, at the household level, it's fortunate that we had Congressman Bobby Scott as chair of the House Education and Labor Committee, because the House crafted two things: the Family First Act, and then in the CARES Act extended some provisions that made sure that those who were unemployed and those who were unable to work because of COVID would be able to get protection. So when you look at the unemployment check that people normally get, it's a disincentive. It's designed to force you to want to work. It's a very low replacement rate, only in most states a maximum of about 30% of your normal pay. So what Congress did was they added an additional $600. This was thanks to Senator Schumer and the Senate. And the $600 would bring the maximum check for the average worker up to their average pay, so that unemployed workers at least would have some better protection from income loss. We know one of the biggest numbers showing up in the April jobs numbers, where we saw unemployment skyrocket, was the drastic drop in labor force participation rate for women. This particularly was common among African American women, and that's because we closed our schools. And so, of course, if you're a single parent and the schools are closed, you have nowhere to put your kids. You are stuck at home. So the paid leave, which was part of the Families First Act, one of the initial rounds, provided paid leave for workers if their child was at home. And then the pandemic unemployment assistance added additional help by letting workers get unemployment insurance if their children were at home. The sad thing is, all of this was passed in the end of March. It took about 2 weeks for the Department of Labor to draft the legislation into language that the states could implement. And by the end of April, we only had 23 states that had implemented all of these features. We're now up to all of the states having implemented all of the features, but you see the time lag, and many of us have argued long ago that we needed to prepare for a downturn and have what are called automatic stabilizers, so it wouldn't have this gap between a recognition of a problem, a solution, and then implementation. But more to the point, back in January, all of this should have been planned for.
Right, and we know that COVID-19 obviously affects the Black community, the virus itself, disproportionately in negative ways. Are we seeing that same effect economically, not just for unemployed, but underemployed Black folks?
Well, it's not the worst for Black workers, actually, because the reason the virus has affected us differently is we disproportionately have frontline jobs. So we're the ones driving the bus. We're the healthcare workers, the first worker you see when you get to the hospital. And so the problem in our community has been that we're on the job. And unfortunately, we're on the job interfacing with the public, or we're on the factory line disproportionately in meat packing. There was a crawfish facility in Louisiana that just had to shut down because the disease spread there. So unfortunately, we are exposed because of the nature of the work that we do. The community that lost the most jobs were Hispanics, because they disproportionately were in the most impacted industries: restaurant work, accommodation work, and a lot of public service work, jobs that get you dealing with the public and providing services. So they actually took the biggest hit. When you look at the spike in unemployment rate for Hispanic men, it was much more dramatic than was true for African Americans. The other group, of course, are women. Women, this is started off as a recession that hit female-dominated jobs the worst. This hurt Black women deeply. And so there's been a dramatic rise for Black women. This is the first time in history that white men have had double-digit unemployment. So while it's true that Black men's unemployment jumped to a disappointing level, Hispanic men who normally have an unemployment rate lower than ours is now higher than ours. And the gap between Black men and white men, which is normally 2 to 1, is now 1.3 to 1. So it's not something that has hit us disproportionately on jobs. On pay, it has, because women, and particularly Black women, have taken big pay cuts. And this is also true for Hispanic workers. So Black and Hispanic workers who have kept their jobs, so the people on the job, have taken massive pay cuts.
Okay. All right, Dr. Spriggs, we appreciate the knowledge so very much. We hope you'll come back and join us again. Hopefully things will be turning around and we'll have something pleasant to discuss.
Well, thanks for having me on. Hopefully we'll get leadership at the top that actually knows how to plan.
We can only hope and vote. Thank you so much, Dr. Spriggs.
Thank you.
All right.